Hello, this is Paul Nelson with Western Sport Floors, Wyoming Wood Floors, coming to you today from Clinton, Montana. I'm excited to talk to you about gymnasium floors, a little bit more about gymnasium floors. My wife and I recently had the chance to take a trip of a lifetime to Scotland and Ireland. We enjoyed it so much. The roads, there's rock walls on each side on the roads, and you can go tour a rock church and a rock castle. Seems like there's standing rocks, some kind of religious monument perhaps. At any rate, there's piles of rocks all over the place that are really interesting and you can go and visit. But the most interesting thing to me in Scotland was I had a chance to visit Sports Labs. They are one of the premier athletic testing facilities in Europe, and they also have a location in Chattanooga, Tennessee, here in the United States. So when we talk about gym floors, an awful lot of the time we are talking about the surface, paint, stain, logos, lettering, game lines. But today we're going to be talking about what's underneath the surface. This sample that I'm holding has a foam, a 0G shock pad underneath it. This sample has a different system. This one has stringers and it has some little rubber pads under it. But these floors are engineered and designed to give some relief to that athlete for their body, their hips, their knees, and their ankles when they're running and jumping on these basketball floors. So what Sports Labs does is they test all kinds of different athletic surfaces, from athletic turf football fields, running tracks, all the way up to volleyballs and basketballs, and they test everything in between. But I had a chance to meet with one of their directors, Mr. Niall MacPhee, and he generously donated his time to show me around the facility and to demonstrate some of their testing machines. So today, during this video, we're going to go through some of the testing that's done underneath these gymnasium floors, or what these gymnasium floors are built upon. I'm just trying to give you an understanding of how much engineering and design is actually in a gymnasium floor, and the testing that goes with it to show that it's safe and comfortable for athlete performance. Today I'm in Edinburgh, Scotland at Sports Labs. I'm here with Mr. Niall MacPhee. Did I get that correct? Niall MacPhee?
That's good enough, Paul.
Okay, close.
Welcome to Scotland.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here. I'm most excited to be here at Sports Labs. And Niall, can you tell us just a little bit about what you do and how you contribute to the industry?
Absolutely, Paul. So we are a test institute, an accredited test institute that tests surfaces and products. So whether something's compliant or not compliant for safety and performance of athletes.
Awesome. And you do a range from artificial athletic fields all the way to volleyballs and everything in between.
Exactly. So our office in Chattanooga in Tennessee, they do American football, they do athletics tracks, they do artificial grass, experts in natural grass as well. So a wide array of surfaces, but also products, whether that be whistles, whether that be balls, whether that be wearable technology. There's a big testing program for all these products.
So we're going to talk primarily today about basketball. And here in Europe, you would follow primarily a FIBA standard. And what does FIBA stand for?
So FIBA is the International Basketball Federation, so the international governing body. Now in America, NBA is massive, but in the rest of the world, we follow the FIBA program. And along with that, there's a European standard that we follow. So a lot of the testing principles and protocols follow FIBA and what is specified in their documents.
Very good. So what we're going to look at first, why don't you tell me about this machine?
We don't want a player sliding and slipping on a surface, so we've got a bit of equipment called slip resistance. So we're looking at a floor, whether a surface is going to be slippy for a player or not. And if it is slippy, how do we take that corrective action to prevent injury? We have a slider here, a calibrated slider that hits the surface, and when we set the equipment up, go up a wee bit. What we've got with the slider is it creates the friction on the surface that simulates the player's foot. So once the equipment's calibrated and ready to go, we can then simulate and get a pendulum test value, a number that allows us to identify the friction of the surface. And this will swing, when it actually swings, it swings all the way through when it's getting calibrated, but when we're testing the surface, it comes down and hits the surface, and we figure out the pendulum test value from that impact.
And so this is going to give you an idea of how slippery the floor is. And FIBA would set a standard at where the floor is supposed to be, yes?
Exactly. So depending on the standard, it might be 80 to 110 pendulum test value. And what that does is it's telling us the friction required to prevent injury of a player. So for example, are they getting enough friction underneath their foot when they're running and pivoting on the surface?
Gotcha. And this machine can be brought on site to a basketball floor, and you can test it on site.
Absolutely. So this bit of equipment was in Gran Canaria last week. The week before that was in Norway. So it's testing surfaces after installation, but we also test in the laboratory from a product point of view as well.
Awesome. Neil, can you explain what this machine is?
Yeah, absolutely. So this, in simple terms, is an artificial athlete. It's simulating how hard the surface is compared to calibrated concrete.
Is it vertical deflection that you're actually measuring?
So in this test, when it's set up at the moment, it's measuring force reduction. So from a calibrated bit of concrete that we know, we say how much force reduction comes through the sample. So how much support the athlete's getting from that surface. When that goes down and hits the surface, the transducer gets a force reading. And that force reading comes up on the software here, and it tells us how soft it is compared to concrete.
In that force reduction, in a gymnasium surface, there's just a little bit of give there, correct? Yeah. And why is that important?
There's a bit of give there to make sure it's soft enough to protect the athlete's joints, and when they're biomechanically adapting their body to the surface, they're safe in doing that. So when we have this impact, we're measuring that it's 50% softer than concrete, so we know that it's safe enough, it's soft enough for the player to perform in.
Awesome. So this is another testing device that you can bring out on site?
Yeah, again, this bit of kit was out on different courts and sites around the world. It travels in the plane in bags, and we take it out, build it, and then we test on site to make sure the installation, like your installation, Paul, are top notch.
Awesome. Okay, so now we've got the same apparatus you had before, but you've added something to it, and what are you testing for here?
So this, Paul, is to test the deflection of the surface. So when someone runs on a surface or there's a heavy load, how much does the surface drop down and recover? So we're seeing how much of that surface deflection is there. So what we're going to do is we're going to drop the mass onto the surface. These transducers, spring loaded, will measure how much it drops into the surface and comes back.
So all that rattling was caught by the computer and it was measured?
Yes, exactly. So it measures both transducers, and it takes the average of the both transducers, which is in millimeters. So we might be 1-2 millimeters depending on the type of surface.
So now we've moved to a different lab, and now we're testing balls.
Yeah, a big part of quality control is the ball. Obviously the player is in contact with the ball, the surface is in contact with the ball, so we need to make sure that ball is up to the right specification.
So does FIBA have specifications for basketballs?
Absolutely, Paul. So you can see on the balls there's a FIBA approved logo, and these balls go through a really tight testing program, and then they get a license and they get the certification.
That's fantastic. So exactly what is this machine doing?
Well, as complicated as it looks, it's just measuring sphericity and circumference. So imagine that round ball. Is it round? And is a quality controller to continue to produce a round ball?
So now you have another area over here where you're, I guess in Europe you're calling it football, and in the States we'd call it soccer, but you're testing these balls by
like a repeat impact.
Repeated impact.
Yeah.
And do you do that test for a basketball as well?
We do with some clients for quality control, and that might be to see if the logo stays on, to see if the shape changes before and after test. And that's important because when you have repeat impact, it's simulating what happens when people are bouncing that ball repeatedly. So we're trying to give it simulated wear.
Okay, Neil, we have another apparatus for testing here.
Yep, this is called the roll and load, and what we're looking at is simulating fatigue in the floor from heavy loads. So if you've got a bleacher or bleachers coming in and out on the surface, is that stressing the surface and damaging the surface? So we use this equipment to simulate that. There's 150 kilograms of mass of 1500 newtons, and that's going to and fro on the surface. And then after the test is completed, when we've done the number of cycles there and back, we're looking for depression in the floor, any cracks, any fatigue, as I said, in the surface.
So on our demonstration here, you're testing a piece of vinyl flooring, but you would do pretty much the exact same test on a wood floor?
Absolutely, it's done the same test on a wooden floor, and it's really important on wood because you might get permanent damage more so on a wooden floor than you might get on a vinyl. So it's a really important test to see that depression and cracking of joints and stress on the surface.
Awesome. And just in case anybody's wondering, this would kind of simulate a large bank of bleachers that might be rolling out on the floor.
Yeah, any heavy load, the most common is a bleacher coming out and back, and that's where it's going to cross the joint and stress in the joints.
Just in closing, Neil, I wanted to thank you for this tour. And can you talk about just a little bit about the importance of testing and maybe where you see it going in the future for the industry, the sports industry?
Yeah, absolutely, Paul. It's really important, and one is because of player safety, and the second is because of performance. You have a player, if they're in a safe environment through testing and knowledge of testing, can they perform in that environment? So we have to get that performance as well, and that's why it's important. And when we talk about developing standards and protocols, we're in a laboratory environment here. You install on site. There's a part that we need to get the products correct, but we also need to make sure they're installed properly. So there's that point where there's a differentiation between a good installation and a bad installation. So it's really important we run these tests for player safety and for performance.
And where do you see testing going in the future?
I think it's going to be more in tune with the player. So we have to continue to work with the player to understand the expectation and tune those tolerances to make sure we're getting the most out of the surfaces. Innovation is coming fast, and we need to make sure that we're learning with innovation and we're creating new tests and new protocols to protect the player and protect the game.
Awesome. And tell me about the whistle.
Well, you know, in basketball, the whistle is amazing because it's synced to the timing clock. And for us, we do a lot of testing on products. One of the products we do very little testing on, but we still do it, is a whistle. We put it in a chamber and we measure the decibel and the frequency. And what that's telling us, is the whistle good enough to be heard by the system, but also be heard by the fans and everyone else in the environment. So it's an important part of the program and a product that's tested.
That's fantastic. To me, that just shows the level of detail that you think through the products that are being used in the sports industry.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, people are spending a lot of time, effort, innovation and money to develop products. There needs to be testing standards that protect quality, and that's why we're here. You know, that's why we're talking about it, and it's really important.
Neil, I thank you very much for this tour and for the time.
Not at all, Paul. I'll see you in America.
I'll look forward to it. You come visit me in Montana.
Good to see you.
For Western Sport Floors and Wyoming Wood Floors, this is Paul Nelson. You make it a great day.